Hello everyone, I'm majicDave and this is Sapiens. This time it's been about a month since the last video I think, and I've probably got about 2 weeks of work done in that time because of school holidays and new baby and all that kind of stuff. So the first thing I want to show you is the new kind of map mode that I've got. So if I just hit the M key, then we're going to zoom out and see the map. We can zoom right out into space, we can just click on a Sapien to zoom right back to them, and we can even zoom the map right in close and sort of see the general area. So there are a few reasons why I decided that this would be a good idea. The first is probably, and this is probably the most important one to me, is that I didn't feel that there was much of a sense of any need to explore in this game. As it was, you could just fly as fast as you want, sort of zoom right out into space, fly over here and look down at the ground, anywhere that you want. And it just took away any kind of sense of mystery. I felt like it was lacking something. And I think that this goes a long way towards fixing that. So now in this first person mode, you'll be limited to how far away from the tribe you can get. You'll be limited to how high you can get and how fast you can move. And this will be sort of a small area where you've got complete control over, building and interacting with things. Whereas the map mode allows you to travel great distances and sort of zoom and teleport quickly across the map. But you won't be able to get in close unless you've actually got some of your tribespeople there. So another reason that I decided to sort of split it into these two different modes of interaction was that the interface for moving around at this sort of higher altitude just wasn't very good. The first-person camera works really well when you're down on the ground and you're interacting with things directly. It's fantastic for building and placing objects, just keeping a really close eye and feeling kind of like you're a part of the world, which I think is wonderful, and I think that's really important that I keep that in this game. But when you're out in space, it just it was difficult to move around and difficult to look, and there's just some real issues like when you're out here and you're in a first-person mode. It's just not very nice to deal with. Whereas now I've got this, the cursor is visible, and you've got this nice trackball that you can spin around, and you've got really good controls for interacting and moving around. You can mouse over things. Now there were a few sort of issues and things that I had to deal with to make this work. Obviously performance is that was hard. So for starters, all of the work that I did moving all of the sort of biome assignment and everything over to C from Lua really helped out here. So the terrain generation is pretty snappy, and it's almost as like all the low hanging fruit is gone. It's about as fast as I can get it without sort of really spending a lot of time doing things that make not much difference. So that stuff is all really fast, and it wasn't quite enough though. I had to do a few more things just to speed up sort of tree loading and a few things like that. And around about this detail level here is probably the worst case scenario on this computer anyway, because it's just rendering so many trees, and so it is still framey at this height. And I don't know if that's if that's something that I will try to fix performance wise. Probably I'm going to just try to not render trees at this height, so sort of only start bringing them in at maybe this sort of height. Once you get out that little bit further and the trees disappear, everything's fine. So I don't know, it's just still a bit of balancing and stuff to do there. As far as technical challenges go, I had to make sure that this worked in VR. I had to deal with the sort of selection of these things, so that when you mouse over, it's like it had to be perfect. Even just dragging along the map here, just finding whereabouts you're clicking and then trying to make that exact. I think that this sort of thing is very important in games. So like I could have just sort of made it a general thing, like how far has the cursor moved, and then just sort of rotated a certain amount and sort of fudged it. But I think it's really nice to be able to know, like, just have that kind of feel that no matter where you are, if I click right on that beach there and move it over here, then the cursor is still under the beach, over the beach, sorry. So yeah, I did the work to make sure that all works. And it because this is a sphere, it gets really complicated when you start dealing with like the North Pole. So, this is north-south aligned right now, but then if you kind of keep going up to the North Pole, we're now upside down. The world is upside down. And, I had to figure out how I was going to deal with that, whether I was going to try to keep it north-south aligned all the time. But that would have caused issues with, when you drag, things wouldn't line up correctly and stuff. But ultimately, yeah, I'm really happy with how this has sort of ended up. The trackball code was difficult, but I figured it out. And now, yeah, I've got this trackball code that I can use on the main screen as well. You can see these are just shadowing artifacts. I'm going to need to just probably turn off shadows at this height and stuff, and there are still a few little bits and pieces that I need to do, but it's getting there. Okay, so that wasn't the only reason why I decided to do map view now, just for the sake of sort of managing tribes and stuff. The reason that I really felt a need to do this is that the initial sort of spawning situation was not ideal. Like you were sort of hunting around in first person mode, just sort of exploring, trying to find tribes, and there were a number of issues, but let me just show you how it's working now. So for one thing, we've now got this trackball code also working here. I think that that's really nice to be able to just rotate it around. Obviously, it's completely physically inaccurate because of the sun. Like you can pull it up here and have the sun like. This doesn't make any sense, but but I don't think it matters. It's more important that it's that you can see what's going on, and that it's just nice to kind of interact with, and it's still spinning around the poles and stuff. It's just okay, so if I just create this world and connect to the server, and the idea is that these are locations that you can start your tribe. They're not necessarily places where there are people. I'm still thinking about this. There's a few options here, but at the moment, the server is sort of creating a few sort of the idea of these sapiens. They don't actually exist in reality, but it's like they are assigned this position, and if another player comes in and has a look, then they'll see the same tribe here. And the idea might be that these sort of, they might age and progress. Some of them may settle down and be controlled by AI tribes. I'm still sort of thinking about all that stuff. I think there has to be AI tribes in this game, and I think that that's probably a good way of managing that. The number of these markers and their locations is all likely to change. I sort of want it to be meaningful. Like some of these locations might be quite difficult, and it might even tell you that this is a difficult starting location because it's in the mountains or doesn't have some particular resource nearby. And yeah, I don't know, there's so many things to think about with all of this, but I think this is a nice way to kind of start. You can just kind of click through, see different tribes, and just choose where you want to start. There's lots of options. They tend to try to sort of start near rivers and lakes or the ocean. And actually, this is really simple at the moment. It's just sort of doing a bunch of tests to see what the lowest point is that's above sea level, and just putting a tribe there. So kind of quite a simple technique that's worked quite well to actually place them around sort of coastlines and rivers and stuff. But anyway, so let's lead this tribe here. And yeah, it's like sort of as quick as that. Like it just zooms straight in and puts your sapiens there. So another reason that I decided it would be better to kind of start the game, with these sort of, proxy tribes as opposed to sort of actual people being loaded up in the world, is, the server was struggling a bit with that. It was having to create these people, and then, so if you were like exploring a whole lot to find your tribe in the early days, then you've got a lot of sapiens being created, and it's just unnecessary kind of stuff for the server to have to do. The server does know about all those markers, so there was one, I don't know if you saw on the map, there was one over there. The server still knows about that, and it could potentially load up an AI tribe there, which would be quite cool. And I don't know yet whether you'd then see that on this map or not. Maybe. Lots of options, but yeah, I think sort of it's a good kind of starting point, right? Okay, so the next thing that I want to show you, this is actually Blender. I just wanted to show you how the terrain engine kind of works and how the anchor system works, because I had to do a bit of optimization on the anchor system. I was finding that the server was actually taking, like, it's supposed to take less than 1/10 of a second to do each step. So it has 1/10 of a second to do kind of all the stuff it needs to do, and if it takes longer than that, then things are going to start to slow down. And what I was finding was that in an advanced kind of world, it was actually taking more than a second, which was ridiculous. That's not acceptable at all. It was causing all sorts of problems. So I had a look at what's going on, and it was to do with my anchors. So it was to do with what the calculations to find out what areas of the world needed to be loaded on the server. So I'm going to explain a little bit more about what the problem was and how I fixed it, just because I think it was kind of interesting. So let me just add an icosphere, and this is basically what the primitive is that the world in Sapiens uses. So there are 20 triangles, 11 vertices, and that is the base kind of object. And what happens is it subdivides each triangle down. So Blender will let you subdivide that, so you can see each triangle has become 4 triangles, and it pushes out that mid vertex out to the radius of the sphere to make it a curve. And so you can keep doing that and get more and more detail. So that's 4 subdivision levels, and I think so that's 5. How high can we go here? 6, 7. Let's go the highest it'll let us. What is it? 8. Okay, so Blender will let you do 8, and then you can't go any further. And the reason it won't let you go any further is because this is now a lot of triangles. If I go into edit mode, you can see, there's quite a lot of vertices, triangles here, and this is level 8. So that's 8 levels of subdivision. Now in Sapiens, there are 21 levels of subdivision. This is what you need in order to get a planet that is larger than Earth and that has a triangle edge that is roughly, I think I've got it at 2 meters. I decided that was a nice length. Now, if we were to subdivide this right down to 21 levels, just like this, we would end up with some extremely large number of triangles. I think it's 8 times 10 to the power of 13. Is what I Googled this morning to try to figure out how many triangles it would be. Another way to look at that would be that if each triangle had 1 byte of data associated with it, which is not even close to enough, then that would be 80 terabytes of data. So you can't generate the whole world before you start. You can't have anything like the whole world loaded. You have to just load small areas around areas of interest. Okay, so back to Sapiens now, and you can see these look like hexagons. The geometry is actually just triangles, just like what you saw in Blender. I'm just using a shader to color the pixels around each vertex instead of each individual triangle, because I thought it looked better and made more sense. So the way that I loaded the more detail around the areas of interest was initially this was a single player game. There was no client server thing going on. It was just single player, and so it needed to load up what you can see as the player. So in first person mode, actually this is kind of a bad place because you can't see any mountains or anything. But it's the stuff that's close is very is at the highest subdivision level, but as you get further away, it's less and less subdivided. So it's based on the distance of the triangle from the player, and as you get further away from the player, the triangles get bigger and bigger. Now, when I split this out to be client server, I basically just took that single player code and made a copy of it and called it the server code and started from there. And it's since changed very significantly, but that initial kind of distance from the player for each triangle thing, which works great when you're rendering the scene, was still being used on the server. And what that meant was that when I started adding Sapiens and stuff, and what needed the ground to still be loaded around them on the server so that they could do pathfinding and find the objects around them and all that kind of stuff, it was still doing a distance calculation, and it was still loading up large areas all around, within a radius of each Sapien. And what the server was having to do was, for every Sapien and every kind of loaded object, it was having to calculate distances and figure out what detail level it needed to have loaded. So this was just completely unnecessary, and it was extremely slow. So I actually had a bug that was causing more and more anchors to slowly load up over time, and ultimately I had hundreds of anchors, hundreds of points that needed the world loaded around them, and it was just spending like a whole second each step just checking distances between triangles and anchors. So I've now got a new anchor system that instead loads up a particular triangle, and the triangle is immediately surrounding it at a certain detail level. So it allows me to specify sort of, okay, I want this particular tree, like if I say gather peaches, it's now got an order on it. This tree now needs to be loaded pretty much all the time. And so before it would have loaded a massive area, now it will just pretty much load this triangle and only the bigger triangles that it contains. So it's really the bare minimum that it needs in order to have this tree loaded. And that's just working way, way faster. So I should be able to support thousands of anchors and really have no performance problems. It's something that was using 100% of the CPU is now using pretty much nothing. So that was, I thought it would be interesting to go into that in a bit more detail. I know some of you want more technical details about how this all works, and I thought that might be interesting. Sorry if it got a bit boring for some of you, but yeah. So anyway, the real kind of benefit for all of that is that now I can actually support playtesting through to quite a lot sort of more advanced stages. Okay, so I've just got one last thing to show you for this video, and that's the new building interaction. So, but previously when you were placing any kind of object, you could nudge it around, and you still can. I've still got this interface. But this is new. So I decided that once you click, you should get a little bit more kind of a fine-grained way of kind of positioning things. Now the reason that I did this is that I actually wanted to make a little bench seat next to the campfire using sort of logs and stuff. And when I tried to do it, I just couldn't get things to match up. It was just too hard, with the tools that I had. And so I thought this would be a nice kind of way of sorting that out. So I did the work to try to, really get the maths right, make it so that you've got really good control over where things are positioned, and it's really good. It's far from perfect, so it still needs a lot of work, but I think I'm really on the right track. So this one with the campfire, you can't rotate it in all different sort of directions, but if I were to place something like a birch log, then you've actually got all three axes to sort of rotate around and position things exactly how you want. Now obviously it's not dealing with clipping, and there's sort of problems as well to do with whether it should snap. I think maybe you should still be able to drag it around and have it follow the terrain after, in this mode, so I'll probably add that. And yeah, I'll probably change this to be like E and Q, I think, instead of enter and escape. Just little ideas. It's like you kind of need to just try things out sometimes and see how they're going to go. I sort of iterated over this quite a bit actually to try to get it looking okay and just being quite nice to interact with. And I think in VR as well, like, this is awesome. It's really cool to be able to place stuff so with such control. So I think that's going to be really good. And yeah, things like I want to then have the ability to copy this object, because you've carefully placed it. You want to place another one the same as the starting point, really. So you just go into this and go copy, and then make a bunch of them and things like that. But yeah, I just thought it was a good idea to work a little bit on building mode, and I'm quite happy with how that's heading as well. So other than that, I have also fixed up a number of other little bugs and issues. They were getting things. Sometimes their queues would grow out of control, and then they'd sort of end up doing the same action over and over again and things. And they were teleporting around the map a bit, and all sorts of little problems and things that are really sort of, I'm ironing them out as I go. I don't want, basically I'm trying to get it to the point where I can really just play this game as a game. And the next step in making that happen is to actually fix the food situation. I've talked about this before a little bit, but yeah, basically at the moment the apples don't grow back on the trees, and there's only a certain number of fruit trees nearby. So as you play, they have to start walking further and further afield to get food, and that's just it's not really an option. It can't stay like that. So, people have talked about maybe they could be nomads and sort of travel and stuff. And yeah, maybe you want to play a bit like that just to start with. But I think, once you're even at this stage, if you've got a house that you can't transport, you really need the ability to be able to at least have some apples growing back on trees, if nothing else. But then probably, starting to actually think about farming. And I think farming is going to be a big mechanic in this game. I have mentioned it before, but I'm really quite excited about farming. And even though maybe you wouldn't have farming and agriculture at this point in the sort of progress, I want to do it. I want to have it in the game, and I want to make sure it works well, and to figure out how some of the mechanics are going to work with farming. So yeah, so that's what I'm going to work on next. So I'll leave it there for now. Please don't forget to wishlist on Steam and like and subscribe and all that kind of stuff. You can follow Play Sapiens on Twitter as well, and come check out the Discord. There's a few of us on there. I am always still posting lots of progress updates on there, so if you want to see more detailed information on there, then or come and have a chat, ask some questions, that's a good place to do it. So yeah, it'll probably be another 2 weeks or so until the next video, and we'll see you then. Cheers.